guys, welcome to a brand new episode of SideQuest Podcast. Listen in and level up. I have a great episode for you today, but first, as always, let's get through the show notes. If you're not following the Facebook page, head over to Facebook, type SideQuest Fitness into the search bar, and like the page. There, you're going to get updates on podcast episodes, articles when they get posted, and you're going to get a brand new taco recipe every Tuesday for Taco Camp. Plus lots of other shenanigans and nerd talk throughout the week, so make sure you head over to Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram. My handle is SideQuestFM. If you want to see some cool videos and random stuff on Instagram as well, you can follow me on Instagram. Same handle, SideQuestFM. Or follow me on Snapchat, SideQuestFit. Follow me there. Send me your questions. I want to get all the questions from you, help you as much as I can on your fitness journey or your journey in life, whatever it may be. But head over to Snapchat, SideQuestFit. Follow me there. You get a little more personal, in-depth look at the shenanigans I get into throughout every day. But I do love getting questions from the community, so please send them out to me. If you have not left a review for the podcast, please head over to iTunes. If you're not listening on iTunes and you listen on SoundCloud or Stitcher, leave a review there as well. When you leave reviews, it helps me move up the charts on the iTunes store so that more people can see and hear the amazing guests that I've had on and have on each and every single week. So make sure you head over there. And don't forget, if you haven't picked up your copy of the 7 Principles of Fat Loss, head over to sidequestfitness.com/7 principles, and you can pick up your copy of the 7 Principles of Fat Loss. These are the same 7 principles I follow each and every day and teach my clients to help them shred away more body fat, unlock heroic strength, and just look better naked. So if you want to unlock strength or just look better naked in the mirror, head over again, grab those 7 principles of fat loss, and start following those today. All right, guys, I have a great episode for you today. I'm joined by another one of the awesome guys I got to meet at Man Camp. His name is Marshall Roy, and he is a fitness coach in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But when he came to Man Camp, he had a really great subject to talk about. And we talked about empathy. As guys, for some reason in our society, we're sort of taught that like feelings are icky and yucky and all of this. But showing empathy and learning how to be empathetic with people's situations will make us better men. So I wanted to have Marshall on to talk about that and get that perspective on things. Because guys, look, I know growing up, we didn't want to you don't want to show emotion. And I wrote this in my Man Camp piece, that the first time my dad ever said it's okay to cry was like when my grandfather died. And, it's okay to be empathetic. It's okay to try and understand people's issues, because the more empathy you can show, the more easy it will be to solve problems. But, of course, before we get into it, Marshall and I geek out on Star Wars. So enjoy that in the episode. Don't forget, head over to sidequestfitness.com. And if you're ready to take your fitness to the next level, go up and click on online coaching. I still have some spots open for the rest of the year. So I want to help you achieve your highest level in fitness, level up your strength, add lean muscle, or shred away some unwanted body fat. So head over there and apply. And if you haven't joined the email list, again, head over and grab the 7 Principles of Fat Loss. Get in the email list. I'm going to show you how to turn fitness into a game, how to gamify your fitness as well in my email course. So head over to SideQuest Fitness for all of that. Again, for show notes as well on the website, click on podcast and you can get the show notes for this episode. But I'm going to stop rambling. Let's get in. Let's hear from Marshall and let's geek out on Star Wars. And then we're going to learn how we as men can be more empathetic towards our friends, our family, our significant others, and to the world around us.
Step up and you gotta get it fitness. Host Rob at the moment and the quest is you gotta check it and wreck it. You're breaking personal records and with the help of the guests you won't be guessing on the lessons. That's a +5 fierce. Got a low-key bamf right here. You wanna meet him, there's no better way to greet him than to strike a boss pose. Take a look into the mirror. All right, guys, I am back with another episode. I'm live here in Atlanta at Tanner's apartment, so the echo will be a little different, but I have a great guest for you today, another one of the amazing gentlemen I got to meet at Man Camp a few weeks ago. And right now, he's so badass, he's rocking a Darth Vader helmet. So it's almost like I'm talking to Darth Vader. And, Vader's got to get ready. He's got a big movie coming out in December. He makes a little cameo, and I can't wait. That
fucking trailer was amazing. That Rogue One trailer was sick. But he's a lifter, he's a writer, he's a coach, but he had a really, really great speech at Man Camp and presentation on why men need to be empathetic and why we shouldn't be afraid of our feelings. And I think that is an important thing to cover as a man, and I wanted to get him on the show. So welcome to the show, Marshall Roy. Marshall, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I've never been more disappointed in myself for not being able to do a really good Darth Vader voice. Because I was raised on the original trilogy. There was a good portion of my childhood where I could recite Return of the Jedi verbatim, like the screenplay. But if I try to do the voice, I think I'll just embarrass myself. So, but yes, so literally right before we got on this call, I watched the new Rogue One trailer, and it was awesome. I'm very excited for that.
It looks so good. I still want to hear Vader. I just want to hear one line. But I like that they played it a little safe in the first. Even though a Skywalker makes an appearance, the first like non-Skywalker based movie, is in between episodes 3 and 4. So it's still a story you kind of know. It's like it's not completely new characters. I think it's a safe bet. But and I have a question about Star Wars for you. So let's just go into that because we're both giant nerds. Is there a character you want to see get their own film?
Whoa. Well, Han Solo is getting kind of like a spin-off series. And I know, but you know what? The actor that they hired is phenomenal. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I saw him in Hail Caesar, the Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah. And
he absolutely steals that movie. He's so good. So I think he's going to be really, really good as Han Solo. Is there a character that I would like to see fleshed out and get their own treatment? Let me think about it. I mean, Lando, right?
That I think that's the one character no one ever mentions, but I think a Lando movie would be really interesting.
And the thing is, you would have to get the tone just right. It couldn't be like a super dark and serious movie like Rogue One. It would almost have to be like there would have to be kind of like a twist to it, almost like a humorous twist, I think, with maybe some darker themes or tones in there. But because when we meet Lando, the twist, spoiler alert, is that he's in the pocket of the Empire.
Yeah,
and so he double crosses Han. And then he triple crosses the Empire because they're keeping him on too short of a leash. So I want to see the process where, because he's like Han, he's a scoundrel, and then he becomes the head of Cloud City, and he's got this kind of little society, and he kind of stays out of everyone's way, and has a pretty cool setup, and then winds up under the thumb of Vader. So I'd like to see that story, or I'd like to see his early days, maybe with some cameos from Han Solo, and also because he's the original owner of the Falcon, right? He's the original owner of the Falcon, so I want to see him, tooting around in the Falcon, doing cool stuff.
Yeah, I think it would be with kind of how big being an entrepreneur is today. The sort of like rock star mentality that you have for that. Like that's really what Lando was. I mean, yeah, he gambled and he lost the Falcon. To Han, but he was really an entrepreneur because if you go into the expanded universe, fuck you, Disney, it still counts as canon. I don't care what they say. So, Heir to the Empire still counts. Like Lando leaves and does his own thing. He starts a business. He's a businessman. Like
he's a business.
I think it'd be really cool to see that side. Almost like a Star Wars version of Wolf of Wall Street. Like I feel like that sort of thing would be kind of cool. Like the rise, the fall, and the sort of rise again.
Yeah.
I like that. I like Lando. Most everyone says Boba Fett. I still think, though Disney will never do it, a Tarantino Boba Fett film would be epic.
Oh, Like an R-rated Boba Fett?
Like an R-rated Boba Fett, because like Tarantino's never done sci-fi. And I would only assume that Tarantino's probably somewhat of a Star Wars fan. Maybe he's not. If he doesn't get it, let Kevin Smith have it. Because he's done a lot of really cool stuff in the last few years. And I think he'd do a good job with the story. But yeah, I think like a really dark, seedy Boba Fett film would be cool.
Yeah, so. And I think one of the disappointments with the prequel trilogy was like kind of getting the whole Boba Fett, Jango Fett thing kind of just spelled out for us. But the thing about Boba Fett is kind of more fun the less you know about him.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that you never even see his face is really cool. Like when my wife saw the original trilogy for the very first time last year. And this is so cool. I managed to track down the VHS cassettes. So they're not Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because I still have those. Yeah.
Yeah. So she saw them the way I saw them. She saw them the way they should be seen. And she, when it was over, like when Boba Fett dies in the Sarlacc pit, although he doesn't really die, but you know what I mean. She was like, "Wait, that's it? Like that's all Boba Fett has in this whole trilogy? I thought he was a main huge character." I was like, "No, he's just this like side guy that everyone really liked because he's a badass, and this whole mythology developed around him. But like he has like 3.5 minutes of screen time, if even that, in the entire trilogy.
All of his lines can fit into one tweet."
Yeah, exactly. I don't even think I think I way overshot that. I think he probably has about 35 seconds of screen time in the entire trilogy, and half of that is getting his ass kicked by Luke.
Yeah.
That's it. So, but still he's awesome. But yeah. So I'm going with Lando. I want to see like an awesome like almost like an action comedy. Do you know what I mean? Like of the early days of Lando.
When you say that, I immediately thought of like Beverly Hills Cop or like what was the other one that Eddie Murphy did? Like 48 Hours? Was that? No, there were like two sort of in that area that like Eddie Murphy did. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see someone like Michael B. Jordan playing him.
Dude, you're in my brain right now. I was thinking Michael B. Jordan because he's a phenomenal actor. Or like Donald Glover, right? The guy from Community.
You know, as you mention that, the more I think about it, I think the only thing about Donald Glover is compared to Michael B. Jordan, he's just not as handsome, and there's some suave like.
We're going to have to agree to disagree on that. Agree to disagree.
We will agree to disagree on that one. So we've chatted about Star Wars, but let's get into a little bit of. So
like we're like that. We've covered all the important stuff at this point.
Yeah. There's really no point in going on. We'll just keep talking about. I have no problem about filling an hour with Star Wars, but I do want to talk about Man Camp and who Marshall Roy is.
Let's do that.
So. For people who may not know you, because I didn't know about you until we met in Austin, give us a little bit of your backstory. And we already know that you grew up loving Star Wars and showed your wife the original trilogy. You're right, as the way it should be seen. Mm-hmm.
But we had to rewind it when we were done.
Yeah.
We had to borrow. I had to call up a childhood friend who I knew still had a VCR in her basement. And I was like, "Can I borrow your VCR?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's in the basement somewhere." So yeah.
But who's Marshall Roy, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up loving Star Wars and superheroes and Batman, and so I was one of those kids who always liked school, and I was pretty good at school, and I always thought that like gym class was a waste of time, and I just wanted to do more learning. And then I got to college, and I was really stressed out, and so I started going to the weight room. And I started lifting weights for no other reason than because I needed to manage my stress. I needed to blow off steam. I had no idea what I was doing. I wish I still had like my very first kind of lifting logs because I didn't know what any exercises were called. So I would just describe what they looked like. So like if I did like a lateral raise, I called it like a T because you look like a T. I mean, I could not have known less about lifting, but I just sort of did what I thought I was supposed to do, or what stuff was supposed to look like. And I think because I was not really invested in the outcome, it was more about the process for me. I need to blow off steam. I'm in college. I'm stressed out. And so I think I accidentally got kind of a good habit formed, which is being focused on the process rather than the outcome. And it wasn't until I had lifted for close to a year that I started to people started to say like, hey man, like you've been working out, like, oh, hey, like you're a little bit built. And that was really exciting because I never really considered that as an outcome. And then once I realized that I had the power to change my body, to become stronger, to become, more muscular, athletic, whatever, I was completely hooked. And, I was like a senior in college going to bed at 10 p.m. so I could get up at 6 and lift. And it was funny too, because I went to a very nerdy school. I went to a school where it was not cool to be it was not cool to play sports. It was not cool to be a jock.
Wait,
so
what school is this?
Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
Yeah. It's cool to be a nerd. It's cool to be, brilliant and it's cool to stay up all night working on school and whatever. So it was funny because it felt like a secret. It felt kind of like counterculture, which is totally the opposite of kind of like most of life. But anyway, so I graduated from college and I got a job in e-commerce, and I had a great time for a couple years, and I met some really amazing, people that I learned a lot from. But within about 2 years, it became clear to me that I needed to be in like the fitness industry because that was what I was really passionate about. So I became a personal trainer at Equinox in New York City. Which is it's like a luxury gym chain, very, very high end, very, very pricey. So it's locker room and shower facilities are feel like a 5-star hotel, very, very upscale, but also just very good quality trainers. Like they put a lot of emphasis on education. Their trainers, generally speaking, are very well educated, very smart, very sharp, and they charge a premium for training. So it was a great place for me to kind of earn my stripes. While I was at Equinox, I went through the RKC level 1 and 2. I became interested in powerlifting. So really just kind of started my career there. A couple years after that, I went into the management side of things, immediately disliked it, decided that I really wanted to have my own facility, left New York City, moved back to the Philly area where I'm from. Flash forward a year, I opened my gym, which is called Rise. And actually, let me show you this. So literally 6 days ago, I moved Rise into its new location, but it doesn't have internet yet. So I'm actually at the original Rise gym, which is completely empty right now. I still have my poster up, but because there's internet here. So, and thankfully the Rise 2.0 is around the corner. So I just walked over here, but yeah, you can see this is my first gym. And then the new gym is like 200 yards that way. So I moved into its new location. It's a little bit bigger. It's got a little bit more room for activities, but it doesn't yet have internet. So here we are. And that's that. And so, yeah, so I'm a gym owner, personal trainer, trying to do more writing and more speaking about things that are important to me. And so that's kind of what led me to Man Camp. I'm friends with David Delanave, and he had this idea for me to speak to the guys about a couple things that I'm pretty passionate about, but still learning about. And that's how that came about. Yeah.
So when you got up to speak, what stuck out to me, and I have a question on this, and we'll come back to it. But you spoke about empathy and why men should not be afraid to be empathetic, to show emotion, which is so interesting because culturally we're raised to not, that man up, don't be a pussy, don't be a wuss, right. Don't men don't cry. The first time my dad ever told me it was okay to cry was when my grandfather died. Like
Yeah.
getting hit in the balls with a baseball, don't cry. Like
Right.
sliding in the home plate and getting like a scratch all the way up to my kneecap, you don't cry.
Right.
Taking a charge in basketball and hitting the back of your head on the floor, you don't cry. Get up and knock it
Right.
off. But your grandpa dying, it's okay to cry. I didn't cry. I didn't cry because I'd been told my whole life it wasn't cool to do that.
Right. And it's so funny that like you get told not to cry, and then you need permission from some other man that it's okay to now it's okay to show emotion. But it's like how would you even know how to?
Right.
You know?
Right. And then you get into your teens, and that's like, I know for me, I one thing I'm sort of really good at is being pretty self-aware about myself. Like I know for a fact that's the reason why I was drawn to like emo music, why I listened to Brand New and Bright Eyes and Taking Back Sunday. Besides the fact the lead singer of Taking Back Sunday went to my high school, like I listened to all of that stuff because I was like, oh my God, I can feel because no one's around me in my car. You know, like it's okay for me to do this. So sort of working through all that. But why do you think our society wants men to lack empathy?
You know, I don't think it's I think, I don't know, this kind of is how I opened my talk at Man Camp, but like there has been this conversation that has resurged, you know, in kind of our adulthood about like masculinity, what it means to be a man. And I have usually found those conversations to be like pretty tiresome and self-indulgent. And it's just another way that like, you know, people like beat their chest and like talk about how great they are and like what an alpha they are and how they like to shoot guns and like lift weights and all this stuff. And like, I just have never had an interest in that. But the reason I agreed to talk at Man Camp is because I felt like for the first time I had something productive to add to that conversation. Which is, and I don't think that any of the conversations about masculinity are really addressing this, which is, to me, it's ironic. Like we're covering all this very well tread territory, which is like, it's cool to have a beard and it's cool to know how to shoot and it's cool to like steak and it's cool to like drive a truck. Like, yeah, of course it is. Like all that stuff is all right. Like that's been true forever. Like that's just that fits so perfectly into the archetype of manhood. I'm not interested in like going over all that old stuff. I don't think it's bad. I think it's great. Like I have a beard. I like to lift weights. I love steak. I don't drive a truck, but I think they're cool. You know what I mean? Like that's, to me, that was like never in question. I think the emotional side of it is where we stand to improve the most. And I think that through our popular culture, through our, you know, generally like patriarchal, male-dominated society, whatever, I do think that we have really we've really like told ourselves this story that like men don't. I think that I'll put it this way. I think our culture teaches men that the only appropriate emotion they can have is rage or anger, right?
Right.
No matter what happens to you, if you are wronged in some way or if something bad happens, right, your response is anger. And I think that anybody who thinks that there isn't a problem of like male anger in our society is not correct. Like I think if you know, like, and that's not me like bashing men or talking bad about men. That's me just like trying to be critical of the culture we live in and the messages we get. So one of the cool things about Man Camp is we talked about the way men are portrayed in movies and TV, you know, in commercials, and what kind of behavior that normalizes. What does that teach us about being a man? And, you know, you think about all of these, like there are some great examples, you know, recently from movies, you know, John Wick and Jack Reacher and all these movie heroes, these guys who like basically deal with their problems by hurting people, by getting pissed off and killing the guys who are responsible.
Well,
right?
Look at the Civil War. Like Iron Man and Cap fight each other. Why? Because Cap knew that like the Winter Soldier, like,
right, exactly. So like literally, okay, that whole movie is about Tony Stark finds out that the Winter Soldier killed his parents. Retroactive spoiler alert. And he's so mad that he's going to fucking kill him. Right?
Right.
And Captain America is like, well, that's my friend. So if you try to kill him, I have to stop you. And therefore we have to fight. Right? Like there's also the Accords. It's more complicated than that. But like ultimately that's what it's about. And so like my whole thesis statement here is like, what got us this far is not going to get us any farther in terms of like how we experience our emotions and also how we express them. And so what I have perceived and what I believe to be true is that a lot of men don't have access to the entire spectrum of their emotional experience. They have access to like a very crude representation of like the ends of the spectrum. Like they can feel happy, they can feel angry, or they can be numb. And if they feel something like embarrassment or shame or sorrow, that immediately kind of gets funneled just into anger, right? That's the only way they know how to express. And that's, that might be a gross generalization, but like, that's kind of what I perceive to be true. And so what I wanted to talk about at Man Camp was just one sliver of that. Like, this is a broad topic. Like, this is not going to get covered in an hour, but what I wanted to talk about at Man Camp was empathy. And I think that a lot of men have the opinion that empathy is a weakness, and the ability to feel deeply and especially to kind of feel what somebody else is feeling alongside them is a weakness. And I feel the opposite. I feel that it's a strength. And I come at this as someone who used to think that also. Like I used to, and to an extent I still do, like really pride myself on being logic driven, on being very emotionally restrained or in control of my emotions.
Very stoic.
Stoic. And so it's only recently that I've realized that like that actually is a hindrance, and it's and you stand to be a stronger, more fully realized and self-actualized man if you actually let go of those reins you have on your emotions and you feel them and you fucking deal with them. You cope with them. You don't just like squash them down and then go express your rage somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's big. That's broad. But that's
what brought you to that understanding of being more empathetic. I know you sort of talked about it a little as you were starting. You mentioned that with like religion and things, you used to be like, I'm very logical, I understand all this, and then like you used to be very outspoken about that, but you started to realize as you started to question things in your own self that you became a little more empathetic towards others of differing opinions. Like, what was that process like, and what got you to that point?
I would say that my wife was like huge catalyst for this, because she's very empathetic and she's very sensitive. And as a woman, that has always felt like an appropriate part of her personality. Right. Even if, and women, this is not just men. I mean, women get this too. They get told that they're too emotional or they're too like whatever. And that's a conversation for another day. But the point is, I think that's one of the reasons we were drawn to one another, is because we both have that capacity. And she is just way more in touch with it than I was. And I think through her example, I started to kind of, and get more in touch with it as well. And I've definitely always been someone who valued harmony. And that is not in any way to say that I don't acknowledge problems, or I think we should all hold hands and sing a song. What I mean by that is like, I get so impatient with unnecessary friction. Like, I think it is a criminal waste of time. Especially when you talk about, in like an election season like this one, the bickering and the mean-spiritedness, like, is such a waste of time and resources. like creativity and brain power. What I prefer to do is focus on common ground. You can take the most divisive issues in our society, and the truth is, usually what we're divided on is not like any type of like fundamental view of the world. We're divided on how we want to get to our common goal. Like we all want the same thing. And far too seldom do we actually start there, right? We usually start with, I'm pissed off at you because you want to do it this way, and I'm pissed off at you because you want to do it this way. It's like, flip that around. We both want to get here, right? So like how do we do it? So a really good example that I like to use, and this is a classic hot button issue, right, is the question of like women's reproductive rights, and specifically abortion. I mean, the people have really strong opinions about this. And the way I look at it is like, well, why don't we start from the fact that nobody wants to get an abortion, right?
Right.
Like we all, like, wouldn't it be great if nobody had to get an abortion, right? We wouldn't even have to outlaw it because nobody would, it's like nobody outlawed a horse and buggy, but we don't use them anymore because like we have a better way. So I was like, so my thinking is like, all right, well, what are things that we know like decrease abortion rates? And it's pretty simple. It's comprehensive sex education. It's access to healthcare and contraception. It has to do with wages also. It has to do with people being able to afford to take care of their children. So that's where I'm like, why don't we focus on that?
On
that,
that,
you know what I mean?
on that issue, do you think it would be less of an issue if there was a contraceptive for men? Do you think, like, if we were the ones going out, like, there's a great, there was a doctor in India that came up with this. I will put a link in the show notes for this. So please go to the website, guys, if you're listening to this. And I really think it's vitally important that you guys look into this. There's a foundation in North Carolina called Permeus, and they are working on a gel that you insert into the vas deferens, and basically like the sperm goes through it and it like rips the sperm in half so that like it can't reproduce. But it takes, so there's no pill, no anything, and all they do is flush it out when you're ready to like have a child. And they put it through baboon testing, but they're looking for financial stuff for coverage. And if you live in North Carolina, they're looking for test subjects possibly in 2017. So, but like for me as a man, I'm like, I would rather do that myself. Do you think it would be less of an issue if like there was a male?
I don't know. I have no idea. I feel like I've heard about what you just said too, and that's cool that it's going forward. I mean, but that also you definitely bring up a good point. Like a lot of contraceptive measures, it's like the onus is on the woman. It's the woman's job to worry about, and that's definitely a little bit of an imbalance that probably should be addressed. And it's funny. Like I didn't mean to like take this into like.
No.
Super serious land, like right away. It's like, now we're talking about abortion. But like, that's a really good example of the way I like to look at things is like, let's
reverse engineer.
Like, let's define our common goal. Like you can take the same kind of, guns are a great thing. Nobody likes gun violence. Nobody thinks it's good. Nobody likes people behaving irresponsibly with guns. Like gun owners who are my friends are some of the most like fastidious and upstanding people that I have ever met with respect to firearms and responsible ownership and being accountable for your actions and being accountable for your possessions. And that's something that I've always perceived to be true. So it feels like there could be a lot of common ground here, like whether you choose to own a firearm or not, whether you love firearms and you have like 20 of them, or you hate them and you don't even want to see one or touch one. Like everyone agrees that like violence with guns is really bad. And, as elementary as that seems, I feel like that's like a lost acknowledgement. It's like let's start there and talk about, how we can get to a point where it's not as big of a problem as it is now. You know what I mean? So if you take any issue, and generally speaking, no matter how different your opinions might be, you're working toward the same thing. You see it in economics a lot too, like people who want more regulations versus less regulations on business. Like the goal is the same. We want everyone to make money. We want to make money. We want to kick ass economically, and so that people have jobs and that they're well compensated and that they can level up socially, and they can buy nice things, and they can send their kids to school, and they can have health insurance. Like that's what everybody wants. And the shareholders make money, and the CEO makes money, and the secretary makes money, and the janitor makes money, and the middle management guy makes money. That's what we want. Again, it seems so obvious, but I think we often fail to start there. And when you start there, you have some built-in empathy for whoever you're talking to, and whatever their point of view may be different from yours. You at least start there. I think that's important.
No, I agree with that. And I think that's something that sadly, the extremes work. Like that's why you see people make $1 million for selling a detox, or a juice cleanse, or some crazy, ridiculous, program. But it's the middle where it happens. Like no one wants to hear about the middle. The unsexy stuff doesn't sell.
Right.
And it's the same. It goes for that as well. But I think that's an important thing, that building the empathy first, finding what everyone has in common, the goal that they want, and then building from there is something that we don't do.
Right.
So besides that, what are your personal biggest stumbling blocks when it comes to practicing empathy? Because I know you said you're still working on it, and I think that's something I try to do and put through the podcast, is that look, yes, I'm a fitness coach. Yes, I'm still working on a lot of things in my life. I'm not perfect, but I think people will want to hear that honesty. So I'd love to know.
Yeah. Okay. So when you started that question, in my mind, I was like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm going to say. But then when you were about halfway through that question, I was like, I know what I should say. And then as you finished that question, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can say that, because I'm taking you through my thought process because
do it.
because a lot of times it's a catch-22. If you have a blind spot that you're not aware of. So a lot of men, will be like, I don't need to work on my empathy. Emotionally, I'm fine. I'm like, dude, you don't even know how blocked off you are. It's like a person who thinks they're fit. And you're like, dude, you don't even know what it feels like to be strong. You don't even know what it feels like to be athletic and to be healthy. You don't even know. You think you're fine. You have such a blind spot. Your frame of reference doesn't exist for this. So the reason I'm saying that is because I was tempted to not answer this question honestly, because it's still a pain point for me. But that's also why I kind of have to now. And I'll tell you, my biggest stumbling block to empathy, and this is where it starts, is self-love. It absolutely is. So, you remember, but, for your listeners, we did an exercise at Man Camp where we figured out what it was about certain other people that either attracted us or repulsed us, and those traits. And the truth is, the traits in people that you're attracted to, it's because you have that trait as well, or you want to have that trait. The people that you're repulsed by, that you just can't stand, you are repulsed by the aspects of them that you dislike in yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay? So a huge challenge with empathy is an inability to kind of get past those things in that other person that you hate about yourself, and to be accepting of your flaws and to kind of love yourself anyway. I mean, it's actually, there's a lot of parallels to fitness. I've seen a lot of people fail in their fitness journey because of some really just nasty self-esteem issues. It's like that with empathy too. So I can be very critical of myself sometimes. And weirdly, like when you're critical of yourself, you can't be as empathetic toward other people. It kind of follows the what is it? The hierarchy of needs. Do you know
Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it starts with like your fundamental physical needs, like oxygen and water and shelter, and it moves up the chain to things like positive social interactions, and then finally self-actualization. So it's, you can expand that out. It's like self-actualization. If you don't have love for yourself, first inwardly, you cannot genuinely show love to any of humanity. You can make the shows of it because you've been culturally conditioned to do so. You can act the part, but it won't be sincere. It's the same with working out. I mean, I'm sure we all know a ton of super fit people who hate themselves.
Yeah.
And they have achieved a physiological response to their actions and their nutrition. So they look like they're in really great shape, and maybe even on paper they're in really great shape, but they still hate themselves and they still live in a personal hell of hating themselves. And again, it's like you can behave in a manner that suggests that you're a loving individual, but if you don't have compassion for yourself, then it's a lie. So that's the hardest thing for me. And I'm a middle child, and I was raised by really, really loving parents. And so I have kind of always had this personality and worldview of being very like caring. And I am, but I'm starting to see how that really has to start with me. And I can't have a bunch of self-limiting beliefs and a bunch of nastiness toward myself if I want to sincerely like be a loving person to the world. So that's something that I struggle with. And it's just like, it's normal stuff that everyone goes through. Like if I have a goal for the day and I fuck it up, like I'm pissed off at myself.
Yeah. Same here.
With moving the gym is a great example. Like every day I have a goal. It's like, all right, I got to bolt down the new squat racks. I gotta pick up the new flooring. I gotta clean this thing. And if I get a late start and I don't get to some of that stuff, or if it goes poorly, or if I feel like I did a crappy job, I'm hard on myself. And then, the funny thing is when I'm hard on myself, I'm more likely to be a jerk to other people. Like, isn't that amazing how that works? And when I'm really kind to myself, I'm much more likely to be kind to others. I think people don't realize you are the person that you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are not, if you're not being kind to yourself, or if you're not being patient with yourself or loving to yourself, like everyone, when you hang out with someone who's negative, like that starts to rub off. Well, like you're hanging out with yourself constantly, literally all the time. So make sure it sounds so circular, but like make sure that you're a good influence on yourself, is something that I really believe in. Yeah. And something else I want to say, because, we get into the touchy feelies like pretty easily in this kind of conversation, but, being empathetic does not mean being nice all the time. It doesn't mean being a pushover. It doesn't mean being Ned Flanders. We talked a lot at Man Camp. I loved in Man Camp, how we talked about like having your personal code of ethics. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like there are you have lines in the sand, and if somebody crosses one of your lines in the sand, then that's a problem. And that's an issue that you have to deal with in whatever way may be appropriate. It might mean calling somebody out on shitty behavior. It might mean cutting somebody out of your life. It might mean socking somebody in the face. Hopefully not, but sometimes it does. And being empathetic does not mean that you let people take advantage of you, or that you have to be nice all the time or be a pushover. All empathy does is like just let you be at peace and free you from the pain of hating people and of being like miserable, because like this election is a great example. There are people out there who are spewing really strong opinions. And if you disagree with them, you can really be miserable. because you're going to be constantly bombarded with people that you don't agree with, who think differently than you, who you probably perceive are not as smart as you, not as informed as you are. And that can be such a pain in the ass, and that can be like really painful headspace to be in. And empathy doesn't change your disagreements, and it doesn't change whether or not that person is a shitty human being. It doesn't change whether or not that person is wrong, but it just lets you get on with your life, right? Like it gives you some relief from that, like I can't just, when you want to just like choke someone.
Yeah.
Like empathy is what kind of like lets you just not suffer for that, right? Doesn't change the facts of the situation. It changes the way you experience it. And it just kind of like lets you be more at peace. And that's really valuable. And it's a lot like the process of working out. It's like whatever problems you're dealing with are still there. But if you can blow off steam in the weight room, like your life is better,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just accidentally booked that full circle really well. Holy shit.
Look at boom,
Whoa.
boom. It's all right. I've got a total idea of how we're going to bring it full circle at the end. But first, we're going to go into some fun questions because we're going to touch back on some Star Wars at the end due to some thoughts I had last night. Marshall, where would you go in a time machine? If you could go anywhere, where would you go?
Oh, so good, so good, so good. All right, so I was an English major. I'm a kind of an English nerd at heart. So I might go back to like 1600 London and try to go see some Shakespeare at the Globe Theatre.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to know what it was like to see it delivered, because we have this idea like this.
Right.
It is the pinnacle of theater, and that's why as an actor it's terrified me to do it, because if you fuck up Shakespeare, it's like,
oh, I know.
Well, yeah, like get out, go, just go, no.
Right.
But one of the things one of my professors did is we did McBee, and part of his dissertation was he wanted to do the show like they did back in the old days. So he let people come in for a show with like banners, like it was a sports game, like you're cheering people on, because he's like, that's what it was like in the crowd, like down with everyone, people were cheering. So I'd love to actually see what it was like in person. But yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. I've got a couple places I'd like to go, but if I have to choose one, I would just go with that.
All right, I like it. What store would you max your credit card out at?
I don't know if it's a store, but like somewhere that sells rad gym equipment like Rogue or Sornex.
All right.
Yeah. Like when Rogue does its Thanksgiving sale, like I have to force myself not to even look, because like it's just I'm not really into flashy clothes. I don't really care much about cars. Not really into power tools, but shit, dude, gym equipment. I love me some gym equipment. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I love it. So that's that.
Awesome. If your life were a movie, what would the title be?
Can I pass?
All right, fine. Who would play Marshall Roy?
Oh boy. I mean, young me. Okay. I would want, let's see. Tom Hardy.
All right.
That's my aspirational answer. I don't know if that's the realistic answer.
Okay. All right.
I feel like the realistic answer is like Colin Hanks.
Dude, nothing wrong with Colin Hanks. I love him.
Dude,
he was a great.
Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with Colin Hanks, but he's no Tom Hardy.
I mean, true. I did enjoy his season of the villain in Dexter. Though after the Trinity Killer, like how do you we
could talk a while about Dexter also, man. We really could. I like to pretend that the show ended after that season.
Yes.
That's how I like to pretend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wasn't a fan of the ending. All right. If you could write a note to your younger self, what would you say in only 2 words?
Two words.
Yeah. Three is always easy, but like narrowing it to 2 is pretty hard.
Yeah. It might be a little bit trite, but maybe it depends on what age I'm writing to, but it might be something like, don't worry.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, so let's go back to talking a little about some fitness and closing out with more Man Camp, and then I'm going to wrap it up with how we started back with Star Wars. So reading through your stuff, I do have to ask, you've done some stuff for the Weather Channel. Can you? Yeah. I tried to click on the link. What in the world did you do for the Weather Channel?
Is that video not up yet, or not up anymore? Okay, so this is back when I lived in New York City. And I did a couple local news things, but so the Weather Channel, it was like this segment about working out outside, like summer workouts, because it was like early summer, and it was really fun. I went to Rockefeller Center at like 6:30 in the morning. I actually did 2 live segments. They were, I don't know, maybe 60 seconds each, but just really kind of generic summer workout tips. Yeah. I mean, really generic, like drink water, and then I was there with a colleague of mine named Nicole, and we were demoing just like some outdoor workout stuff you can do. So she was doing like a burpee into like a push up into like an ab thing, and it was like, hey, like do 10 reps of this. And then it was a couple of years ago, but yeah, it was a really cool segment actually. It was a really good experience. It was a lot of fun. But it was very much for the general audience. It was like, hey, go take a walk, right. Make sure that you drink water. But the whole gist was like summertime is a great time to like get outside. Don't forget the gym, like actually go enjoy the outdoors. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I saw that and I was like, man, I gotta ask about that. You have a quote sort of on your site and you're about me, and I wanted to ask about it. The quote says, because you're talking about fitness, it also means you don't have to be perfect, but rather strive for excellence and consistency. Perfection is an illusion, but the achievements made in its pursuit are very real. So a lot of times we're all chasing this end goal. You fell in love with the process, and I know it's the love of the process, not the goal at the end. But so many of us see this illusion, what we want, and we sort of drive ourselves insane. So how do you stay sane while chasing a dream or what could be an illusion off in the distance?
I think perspective. I talk a lot with my clients and in my classes about long-term mindset. I don't care if anybody can go to the gym for a week and feel like a badass. I care about, are you coming in consistently for 6 to 12 months? And I don't care, like anybody can do one workout where they just go, just balls to the wall, and we all know that one workout does nothing. Right. I don't care about you doing one badass workout. I care about you doing 100 challenging workouts. And I think that perspective. So like for me, like that long-term mindset, because we all do it. We all have this idealized version of ourselves. Like I have this version of myself that looks like The Rock, and lifts like Chad Wesley Smith, and speaks like as well as Barack Obama, and has as much money as someone awesome who has a ton of money. You know what I mean? Like there's this version of myself that is ridiculous because it's not realistic, and yet it's what I'm striving for. But I know I'm not going to get there this week. I know I'm not going to get there this year, right? I actually know that I'm never going to get there. That's the point. But my long-term mindset is okay, this is what I'm working toward in the next couple of years. And the next couple of years will roll by and I still won't be The Rock and Chad Wesley Smith and maybe I'll be a millionaire, knock on wood. But the point is, like, still, like, 2020 will get here, and I'll either be better off than I am now, or I won't be. And so that's kind of like, it's that long-term mindset. It's kind of like, if you're lost in the desert, and you're like the whole point of the horizon is you never reach it.
Right.
But if you go towards it, eventually you'll come out of the desert, So that's kind of like how I think about it. And I don't know if I still stand by that quote as I wrote it, but the concept still makes sense to me. It's like you have to strive for, your absolute perfect goal, and also be humble enough and have enough of a long-term mindset to realize that, like, it's really the process that counts,
Yeah. Right. I agree.
Yeah.
So we got a few more minutes here. One more quick question on
Sure.
fitness stuff. You've done some kickboxing back in the day.
But way back in the day. Yeah.
Way back in the day. It's something that I would like to do at some point, but I did some boxing in high school. And by did boxing, I mean, my friends and I decided to go to a friend's family's gym that had a boxing ring. And they decided that, hey, it'd be really cool if we, like, put some gear on and box. Except I had to box 3 people straight in a row. And basically it was just flailing. Like, it was just me. Like,
yeah. It just becomes a slap fight.
Yeah, that's all it was. So did you take any strength training lessons that you still use from kickboxing?
No, when I did it, we didn't really do any strength work whatsoever, other than, like, I mean, boxing is still very old school with respect to how they do strength and conditioning. I think for better or worse. So we would do stuff like push-ups, but that was pretty much it. But I do think I think martial arts and gymnastics are the perfect physical activity for young people to get involved in. Particularly kids, like I just think that something that's body weight based, I think you develop a good sense of your body, you develop good proprioception, kinesthetic awareness. Martial arts is a tremendously valuable skill to have. So I think it probably helped form a foundation of what I did later. But no, to be honest, like, there really isn't any. There isn't really any, like, strength stuff that I like took from that. But that is where I really learned. I think the first time I experienced, like, the joy of physical exertion was in kickboxing. And then as I got really into school and I got really into, like, scholarly shit, I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, pleasure is really only derived from, like, knowledge. And the only way to get physical pleasure is, like, sexual pleasure, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh, no. There is, like, a tremendous satisfaction in exerting yourself for a goal. It's, like, unbelievably satisfying. And there's that feeling you have when you've, like, finished a hard workout and you've really achieved what you set out for. And, like, it's a literal physical high because of what's happening in your body chemically. And the first time I experienced that was in kickboxing. And you have that simultaneous feeling of, like, I am physically stressed, but I am emotionally elated. And it's if you've never felt it, it doesn't make sense. But if you have felt it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
All right. So we got just about 5 more minutes. I want to wrap up. Cool. We've been on for about an hour. And I want to go back into, sort of empathy. And we've talked a lot about, as men, we sort of, in a way, I'm going to frame it like this, going back to Star Wars. In a way, we're sort of told to be like, Jedi. Like, don't pay attention to your emotions. They're bad. You don't want to focus on them. Like, just put them away, ignore them. But then there's also that sort of, that rage-filled, like, response from hiding all that emotion, and you sort of let some of the dark side out, but you got to be afraid of that dark side. And we're looking for sort of balance. And I think that's something that in our society, men are still trying to understand. How do we balance our testosterone, our aggressive side, but how do we find that emotional side? How do we connect with that? So how do we become gray Jedi? That's sort of the main question.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, first of all, Star Wars is a phenomenal example of this concept of like the Jedi are supposed to be completely kind of free from emotion.
Right.
And the reason is so that they are not susceptible to using their great power in an emotional way with kind of like the whimsy of emotion.
Right.
Of course, we all know that can also backfire horribly, because if you have absolutely no experience in feeling your emotions, you are also susceptible to being seduced by the power of your anger and your rage and becoming a dark force user, a dark side. And I think that Luke is like a great parable at the end of Return of the Jedi, when he kind of momentarily, when Vader like really prods him, and he kind of momentarily fights with anger and he beats the shit out of Vader, and has that moment of realization that if he continues, he will become him.
Yep.
That's a great parable for kind of like what I'm talking about. And so it's actually, there's a couple things that tie in here. Like, we will always resist and sort of fear what we don't understand.
Yep.
I think a lot of people that I know and I love very much are very like anti-gun, but they've never used a gun. So I'm like, you use a knife every day, you drive a car every day. Those are both deadly things that you have zero fear of because you understand them and because you use them yourself. So I think that like understanding and experience is sort of how we like take away something's power to frighten us. So if you just kind of embrace your emotional side, you see that it's not at odds with your more traditionally masculine side, right? Like, I still lift weights, I still like steak, I still like action movies, but like I can perceive when I'm like when I'm having an emotion and it doesn't like scare me and I don't feel the need to like act out to do something about it. I just think that's really important. Like, these things are not at odds. They're like, an individual is like an extremely deep and multifaceted entity. It's not just as simple as like, well, like either you have a beard and you're like a man's man, like, or you're just like weak, emotional, like sissy boy, like it's really not that simple. And it also doesn't have to be, it doesn't really have to be a puzzle. Like, these parts of you can coexist. Something that I'm interested to see in episodes 8 and 9 is if that Jedi paradigm gets adjusted a little bit, because Luke didn't start Jedi training until he was a young adult. So he grew up with these emotions and still has them. And if the theory that Rey is his daughter pans out, then at some point, presumably, he was in love with a woman and had a child. So I would love to see Luke as this new Jedi paradigm, as a person who has not rejected emotion, but has instead embraced it, whether voluntarily or not, because he didn't have Jedi training from youth. And we've seen kind of the evidence that could be the case. I mean, him kind of fighting with a little bit of rage, and Return of the Jedi. And then once he's felt it, choosing not to continue with it. He very calmly then rejects the Emperor. He's felt it, and now that he's free from fearing it, and he's free from wondering what it's all about, he can make the choice whether or not he wants to embrace it.
Man, it's like I wrote a piece a while ago about my dad, titled "My Dad is Darth Vader," or was Darth Vader, and because that cave scene has always terrified me. Mm-hmm. But even that scene in Jedi, just recently, my dad said something to me that brought that scene back up in my head, and it just really hit me very hard. But that scene, like those two scenes are the epitome of like every boy is afraid that he'll become his dad. And in some way, like you have a point. There's a turning point in your life where you have to decide either I'm going to continue going down and become Darth Vader, or I'm going to choose a different path. And I think it will be interesting with 8 and 9 to see where they go with Luke and what they do with him, because, you know, in the comics and the stories, there's a whole lot of things that happen. I'm interested to see what happens. My actual real hope is that Rey kind of becomes like, there's a switch where Rey becomes a bad guy, and Ben, which only irks me a little that they called him Ben. I'm like, no, that's the wrong goddamn character. Damn it. You can't call him Ben Solo. It'll be interesting to see. I hope that I would love to see him become sort of the good guy in the end, but we'll see what happens. And they could completely do something totally different, and all of us fans are thinking she's his daughter or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. I think that Anakin Skywalker is maybe the perfect paradigm, though, for an individual who is shut off from emotion, and then as a result is ruled by first fear, and then anger.
Yeah.
You know, episodes 1 through 3 are all about fear. And Yoda has the famous, fear is the path to the dark side, whatever.
Yeah.
And then once he becomes Darth Vader, once he's knighted by the Emperor, he's then driven by anger. And I don't think Luke is a perfect counterpoint, but he's somewhat of a counterpoint to that. And I hope that we begin to see, maybe we will see eventually in Rey, but we see kind of a perfect counterpoint of a person who is not driven by fear and by anger, but instead is driven by love. See what that looks like.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I'm excited. So that's what I'm hoping for Rogue One. I sit down, we get a little teaser of episode 8. So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of flashbacks, because I know the director likes to do a lot of crazy things with time as well. So, but Marshall, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. We're over an hour, but if people want to know more about you, where can they find you online?
The best place, I'm on Facebook. My gym is called Rise, and you can check that out at risegym.com. It's just outside Philly. I'm on Instagram, Marshall Roy, Twitter, Marshall Roy. I don't have a personal website at the moment. I used to. I no longer do. It's a work in progress. So Facebook, social media, risegym.com.
Yeah. So, guys, check him out on Instagram. Check him out on Twitter. And please, if you want to get into some nerdy Star Wars talk, tag Marshall and I, and we will definitely chat some Star Wars on Twitter. But Marshall, I really enjoyed your talk in Austin, and I wanted to get you on to talk more about it, because as I get older, it's weird because mentally I feel like I'm still in my mid-20s, even though I'm 30. I'm thinking more about manhood, and it's where I want to go, what I want to do, and trying to become better than who I thought I was going to be, but also better than my dad. So I'm thinking about it a lot, and I really enjoyed your talk on empathy, and I wanted to get you on to talk about that, because there's more to life than lifting weights. There's more to life than deadlifts and bench presses. So thank you so much for coming on. I hate to admit it, there is more to life than lifting weights. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Marshall.
Dude, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. This was fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, of course.
Step up and you gotta get it fitness. Host Rob at the moment, and the quest is you gotta check it and wreck it. You're breaking personal records, and with the help of the guests, you won't be guessing on the lessons. That's a +5 fierce. Got a low-key bamf right here. You wanna meet him, there's no better way to greet him than to strike a boss pose. Take a look into the mirror.